Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going micro. We're looking at an invisible battle happening right now inside the walls of your home.
It sounds a bit like science fiction, doesn't it? But it's pure infrastructure reality.
Absolutely. We're pitting chemical disinfectants in your drinking water against the very plastic materials that are supposed to deliver it.
So our mission today is to really get into the science of this. We're talking about polymer degradation in chlorinated water.
And we'll be comparing modern piping materials, specifically PEX-A versus PEX-B.
Because those differences, as we'll see, connect this niche chemistry to massive infrastructure failure, something like the 2021 Texas winter storm.
Right, and for this, we've synthesized data from a whole range of sources. We've got a polymer review, detailed articles on PEX piping, and a summary of the winter storm Yuri disaster.
It's a really rigorous set of materials to pull from.
And it all starts with this initial paradox. Chlorination is one of the most significant public health advancements, period.
Oh, since the early 1900s, easily.
Over 98% of all water treatment facilities in the U.S. use it. It's saved millions of lives.
It's the bedrock of safe drinking water. But, and this is the crucial but, chlorine is fundamentally an aggressive chemical weapon.
Right.
It's designed to destroy organic life, bacteria and viruses. It doesn't just stop because it hits a plastic pipe.
So this essential process is also what dramatically reduces the lifetime of the pipes, the gaskets, the valves.
Everything, every polymer component it touches.
Okay, let's unpack that. How does a chemical that's targeting microorganisms physically attack a plastic pipe made of polyethylene?
Well, the key is that chlorine is a strong oxidizer. I want you to think of a polymer chain, like in a PE or PEX pipe, as a huge, long beaded necklace.
Okay.
That structure is what gives the pipe its strength. When chlorine comes along, it starts what chemists call chain scission.
It's breaking the chain.
Exactly. It literally snaps the carbon-to-carbon bonds. That's the backbone of the whole structure. Over time, enough of those bonds break, and the material just starts to disintegrate.
It becomes brittle.
Brittle, loses its elasticity, and eventually it just fails.
And our sources say this isn't a simple process. There are 7 major factors.
Right. It's not linear at all.
You've got the material itself, but also pressure, temperature, water pH, chlorine concentration, and just time.
It is a dizzying mix. But for the homeowner, you can really think of temperature and chlorine as the 2 main speed dials for failure.
More heat, more chlorine, faster breakdown.
Exponentially faster, especially in things like hot water recirculation lines.
That makes sense. Heat speeds up chemical reactions.
Yeah.
But what about pH? Why does the acidity of the water matter so much?
That's where the chemistry gets really interesting. The pH decides the exact chemical form, the speciation of the chlorine.
Okay.
In the normal drinking water range, say 6.5 to 8.5, you have 2 main players, hypochlorous acid, or HOCl, and the hypochlorite anion, ClO.
I'm guessing one is worse than the other.
Oh, much worse. HOCl is the highly aggressive one. It's the chemical in full attack mode, and you get the highest rates of polymer degradation when the pH is less than 7.5.
So slightly acidic.
Exactly. That's where HOCl dominates. The minute you go more alkaline, it shifts to the slower-acting ClO form. It's why utilities work so hard to keep the pH stable.
It's not just for us, it's for the pipes.
It's to protect their own infrastructure.
You also mentioned it's not just HOCl doing the damage. What else is in that chemical demolition crew?
Right. The reaction itself creates other highly oxidative substances. You get singlet oxygen, and even these highly reactive radicals, like the hydroxyl radical.
And those are even more destructive.
They're incredibly destructive. They're like these tiny little chemical bombs going off right next to the polymer chain.
So let's trace that failure process. We start with a healthy pipe. What's the very first thing that happens?
The first stage is the surface attack. See, manufacturers put antioxidants in the plastic. They're stabilizers designed to sacrifice themselves.
To take the hit first.
Precisely. So the chlorinated water immediately starts chewing through those antioxidants. It's this slow, losing battle for the pipe's defenses.
Once that shield is gone, what's next?
Stage 2 is the real structural failure. The chlorine starts attacking what we call interlamellar tie molecules. These are the things holding those big polymer chains together.
So the internal supports start snapping.
That's a perfect analogy. The fence is still standing, but it's getting floppy and weak.
Which leads right to the final stage, micro cracks.
Exactly. These tiny molecular cracks form, they grow, they connect. Eventually, the normal water pressure in the pipe, maybe 50, 60 psi, is enough to just overwhelm what's left.
And that's your leak. Or worse, a catastrophic burst.
And that is why these materials just have to be replaced so much more often than something like copper. It's a huge hidden cost.
Which brings us to PEX. I mean, cross-linked polyethylene is the standard now. It's flexible, durable, installation is super fast.
No heat, no solvents. It's a builder's dream.
But, and our sources really stress this, not all PEX is the same. The difference between PEX-A and PEX-B is absolutely foundational.
It really is. The core difference comes from the manufacturing process itself. It dictates how the material will stand up to everything we just talked about.
The feet, pressure, chlorine, cold.
All of it.
So tell us about the two methods.
PEXA is made using the peroxide method, sometimes called the angle method. This gives you a highly cross-linked structure. We're talking 85 to 89%.
And PEX-B.
PEXB uses the Silane method, which is a moisture cure. That results in a moderately cross-linked structure, more in the range of 65 to 70%.
That 15 or 20% difference doesn't sound like a lot on paper.
You'd think so, but it translates to massive differences in the real world. Think of the cross-links as the chemical reinforcements holding that beaded necklace together.
Okay.
PEX-A is just woven together much, much more tightly, so when it faces any kind of stress, chemical or physical, that structure is just far more resistant to breaking.
All right, let's do the learner's shortcut comparison. Let's start with cost, the wallet.
PEX-A is significantly more expensive, no question.
Right. A half-inch PEX-A pipe can be 64% more expensive than PEX-B. And for larger pipes like 3/4 inch, that cost gap can jump to over 130%.
So you save a lot of money up front by choosing B.
But that upfront saving can lead to some serious long-term costs and even immediate headaches for the homeowner.
Especially when it comes to water flow and pressure.
Let's talk about the fittings. I know this is a huge deal.
It's a massive differentiator. Because PEX-A is so flexible and resilient, you can use what are called expansion fittings.
ASTM F1960.
That's the one. You expand the pipe, slide it over the fitting, and it shrinks back down, creating a perfect seal. But the key is the internal diameter of that fitting is huge.
So you get more flow.
About 25% greater flow area than with PEXB fittings.
Because PEXI has to use those smaller insert fittings, right?
Exactly. Usually brass fittings that go inside the pipe, and they drastically restrict the flow.
And our sources say every single one of those fittings can cause a pressure drop of up to 5 psi.
It's a huge penalty.
So for you listening, that's why your shower turns into a trickle when someone flushes a toilet or runs the dishwasher. If you have a complex PEX-B system, that pressure loss adds up so fast.
And it goes beyond that to just installation and repair. PEX-A is so flexible, you can make a 90-degree turn without a fitting at all. Fewer failure points.
And the repair advantage is just incredible. If you accidentally kink PEXI pipe, you can just heat it with a heat gun.
And it just retracts and actually strengthens that spot. It's amazing.
Whereas with PEXI-B, if it kinks, you're done. You have to cut that section out.
And replace it. Which means adding more costly fittings and more places for it to leak down the road.
Okay, now for the big one. Resilience. Especially freeze resistance.
This is the critical vulnerability, especially in colder climates. When water freezes and expands, PEX-A just expands with it. It doesn't develop microcracks.
And when it thaws,
It just snaps right back to its original shape. It has a thermal memory.
like memory foam for your plumbing.
That's a great way to put it. PEX-B, on the other hand, it will expand, but that moderate cross-linking isn't strong enough. It develops those tiny microcracks under the stress.
So when the ice thaws, you get leaks.
You get leaks. Maybe not right away, but you will.
And what about that constant chemical attack from the chlorine?
The higher cross-linking in PEX-A gives it superior resistance there, too. It's rated to handle 5 parts per million of chlorine at 140 degrees for 50 years.
And PEX-B.
Is only rated for 4 parts per million under those same conditions.
Wow.
And the cold impact tests are really stark. At -4 degrees Fahrenheit, PEX-A has a failure rate of less than 5%. PEXB fails 10 to 15% of the time.
That's up to 3 times the chance of failure.
3 times.
So the choice is between a more expensive, high-flow, resilient system
Yeah.
and a cheaper system that is demonstrably more vulnerable to the exact things that pipes face every single day.
And that's where we bring it all home. We have to connect that 5% versus 15% failure rate to the vulnerability of an entire society.
And for that, we look at the 2021 Texas winter storm, Yuri.
It's just a dramatic, horrifying case study of how these small material science decisions, when you multiply them by millions, lead to staggering failure.
The numbers are still hard to comprehend. 144 straight hours of freezing temperatures, an estimated $130 billion in economic losses.
And it wasn't just a power failure. It was a cascading disaster. The grid went down, then drinking water treatment, then medical services.
And looking just at the water, the city of Austin got, almost 2,500 calls for private plumbing breaks right after the storm.
2,449 to be exact.
And a lot of those failures were in exposed pipes in big apartment buildings and condos. Exactly the kind of places where builders might choose the lowest initial material cost.
You have to assume that a significant portion of that was lower cost, less resilient piping like PEX-B failing under stress.
Yeah.
And when the pipes fail, the whole system fails.
Instantly. You had massive sanitation issues. People were using melted snow, pool water just to flush toilets.
And the #1 safety rule, boil your water, was impossible for millions without power, which, of course, hits the most vulnerable people the hardest.
It's the perfect storm of material vulnerability meeting systemic failure. But the disaster wasn't just physical, was it?
No, it also exposed huge breakdowns in communication and accountability that just made the crisis worse.
The human error on top of the physical failure.
Exactly. Officials relied on social media and TV for alerts. But if you don't have power, you can't charge your phone, you can't turn on the TV.
The emergency systems failed when people needed them most.
And the advice they did get out was contradictory. Some said, let your faucets drip. Others said, turn the water off completely. It just created panic.
And led to more pipes breaking.
And then there was the loss of trust. I mean, people saw those images of empty downtown offices fully lit and heated while their own homes were dark and freezing.
It creates this powerful narrative of abandonment.
And that's when a system moves from just an infrastructure failure to a full-on civic breakdown. It really all started with the pipes.
So what does this all mean? What's the core lesson here?
I think the lesson is incredibly clear. Infrastructure resilience, whether it's your home's plumbing or a state's power grid, it depends on two things.
Okay.
The conscious choice of materials that can handle chemical and thermal stress, and having clear, functional systems ready for when failures inevitably happen.
We've seen how chlorination just eats away at a pipe's defenses, leading to that chain scission and failure.
And we've detailed how something like PEX-A offers that superior flexibility, freeze resistance, and chemical resistance compared to the cheaper but much more vulnerable PEX-B.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to think about.
We know PEX-A is significantly more resilient to cold, failing less than 5% of the time compared to PEX-B's 10 to 15% failure rate. So the question is this: how does saving a few cents per foot on a pipe translate into a $130 billion economic disaster and a total breakdown of community safety when a crisis like Winter Storm Yuri hits? Think about the true cost of non-resilience and who ultimately pays that price.